Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette, and we're so glad you're with us for this episode of Stay Curious. Actually, it happens to be our 716th episode in 2.5 years that Marty Winkle, my co-producer, Apollo Lunar Module electrical engineer, and Space Shuttle launch process systems manager. Marty and I have been doing this for over 2.5 years, and we're so glad that we've attracted a great group of space geeks like yourself out there that enjoy space history, occasional astronaut birthday. We've got a good one today. And today we're going to celebrate the birthday of the U.S. Space Force, the third-year birthday of America's newest branch of the military, the first new branch in 70 years. I found out some things I didn't know about it by doing research for our episode today, so I'm sure that you want to stay curious and learn about that too. Big shout out to Marty, working our Streamlabs board there with Connie McDaniels, volunteer here at the American Space Museum that's learned to help us out. See, how are you both today on our UCAC microphone?
Mark, we're doing good. She's just a little bit hesitant about talking on the mic.
I understand, and not putting you on the spot, but want to acknowledge that it takes a team to do this program, and I'm so blessed that Marty's been with me all this time. We have really proud of what we put out there for you all, and it's up to you to help us branch out there and get a little bit bigger for our wonderful nonprofit here that many of you have been at, and we'll be giving a shout out to you here in a minute or two. We wanted to give a shout out to some space art. We're looking at Greetings for the Season. That is a Hubble telescope image there that is still bringing us some fabulous images 30 years after it was orbited. And now the Webb telescope is doing the same. And we'll mention the Webb here in just a minute. But we love our whimsical postcards that Don McKee, a NASA illustrator, did in the 1960s and 70s. This one's called Indian River Poker Game, as Santa's up there playing cards with Martians, probably losing his shirt, so to speak, at Texas Hold'em. His clothes are hanging out on the line there. UFOs getting fueled up by swamp gas. And one of the classic images by Mr. Don McKee, who was a NASA illustrator and one of the first ones to do things like a cutaway of the VAB in his talents. Well, I saw on Facebook today that one of my favorite podcasts that I watch occasionally, and I don't watch very many, had featured space museums. And that podcast is Space and Things with Dave Giles and Emily Carney. And so Emily gave us a wonderful shout out to the American Space Museum. Love you, Emily. Thank you for all the kind words she said about us. She, of course, is the founder of Space Hipsters 11 years ago. 30,000 just space hungry followers on her wonderful Facebook page. We've got a little over 10,000 on our Facebook page, by the way, and that's plenty. We want all you 10,000 out there watching Stay Curious someday. That would be a big for our nonprofit, because we have monetized YouTube and our American Space Museum channel and making a few dollars a week basically on it. But Space and Things is something that you all need to tune into. Just Google Space and Things podcast. It'll take you right there. That's a weekly podcast devoted to exploration of space with updates on what is happening in the space flight world, as well as looking back at some of the history. Emily's so good at that. She's been in our museum many, many times, and Emily Carney's the content director for Celestis, which is the company that will take your ashes and orbit them around the Earth, maybe even take them to the moon one day. So we appreciate the kind words Emily said about this. And Dave, I've not met him, but boy, is he very knowledgeable. He's an outstanding musician in London, and Emily and Dave do this over across the pond, so to speak, with today's technology. Once a week, Marty, they do their podcast they mentioned they were up to 127, I think, podcasts. And since this is our 716th one, what would we call that, Marty? A good start?
Yep.
Marty says, yeah.
Good midway.
Well, we're doing it 5 days a week, and though there was some resistance early on for us not to do it 5 days a week, I protested that space history happens every day, and we really want to reach out to the shuttle community and those shuttle astronauts that have birthdays every week and every day. And we're going to, one of the true pioneers of the shuttle is we're going to sing. Yeah, I may sing, Marty. Happy birthday today. You never know when I might sing. That wouldn't get us more viewers, I don't think. But anyway, thank you, Emily, for embracing our museum. Dave, can't wait for you to come here on your next trip. In the notes, Dave, in 2019, to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, Marty, he visited all of the crewed space vehicles flown by NASA, from Freedom 7 to Space Shuttle orbiters, all right? So he went to all the museums to see all this hardware. Now, that is something. And once you find their website, which is called, you can go to the website for the web, of course, spaceandthings.com. You'll find it. So fascinating, Dave. Love to meet you. We'll connect on the pond maybe and do a Stay Curious program with you. And Emily, the chair beside me, is always welcome for you to sit in anytime you're on the Space Coast and talk about all your endeavors there. So both two very knowledgeable people, by the way, on space history. Do you know what Emily's got in her hands there? She has got the Grumman space shuttle that was going to be launched on the Saturn S-1B. And that was a rare model that we sold in our auction for somewhere around $3,000, I believe. We don't auction. We couldn't keep it in our museum. Actually, it wasn't a private collection consignment, or we would have kept that thing, and it'd be shown right now. Well, it's getting to be the end of the year, and I'm asking Dave Stange and Larry Pusker and all of our friends out there, if you got a top 10 thing of the year that sticks out in your mind, shoot it to us in our communications here, or mark@americanspacemuseum.org. Make that Mark spelled with a Q, M-A-R-Q. And we'd like to have your top 10 list of what you might think were the events of the year that we need to highlight next week. So open to that. I don't know. Can you think of any? Of course, the launch of Artemis 1 is going to be number 1 or number 2 probably on that list. But there's a lot of other things. How about the Webb telescope? Is that more important than Artemis or not for number 1 or number 2? Maybe we'll ask you that question. Webb telescope, Artemis 1. Which one's going to broaden humanity first or the longest? So anyway, we'll have some fun with that all next week as we kind of kick our heels back and look at some more interesting programs. Tomorrow, I will do the Star of Bethlehem, the classic story of what was the most famous star ever to be seen in the sky. Program I've done many years, and we did it with our astronomy club last night. So hope that you'll enjoy that tomorrow to round out our Christmas week here at the American Space Museum. Also wanted to give a shout out to these two people well, my notes, Marty, did I leave them in the case over there? That's Christina and Dave, and I wanted to get their last names. Here we are. I have it. I'm sorry. Christina Smith-Meyer, she is with SES, the world's renowned largest manufacturer of satellites. She was here last week to launch the SES satellites on top of the Falcon 9 rocket, and came in and did a nice documentary on our museum with David Wachs there. David's from New York City, a photographer that they hired, and they worked great. We interviewed some people around here and myself, got a lot of B-roll. Everybody loves our museum to get the what they call B-roll, where there's pretty pictures rolling while somebody's talking in the background. So Christina and David, thank you for all the love that you spread about the American Space Museum. And when she has that piece together and sends it to me, I'll send you the link on that. So important that we have. In fact, she is from Luxembourg, and like I said, he is from New York City, and very involved with ESA over there. So, well, happy birthday! Who is the birthday boy today, Marty? Well, that would be Mr. Carl Bo Bobko. Happy 85th birthday to this pioneering shuttle pilot. He was one of the first pilots and commanders. Carol Joseph Bo Bobko was born December 23rd, 1937 in Queens, New York. Ukrainian and Lithuanian roots, okay? He's a veteran of 3 early space flights in the 1980s. And Bo, as his nickname is, and I've never met him, was part of the Air Force's Manned Orbiting Laboratory Astronaut Corps in 1966. Here's a picture of his shuttle. Tell you about that in a second. 3 shuttle missions, 16 days in space. He was on the maiden flights of Challenger and Atlantis. How cool is that? He was commander of Atlantis on its maiden flight. That was a top secret STS-51J in October 95, his last mission, or 1985 was his last mission. So, Marty, I admire these early pilots and commanders. They were shaking down these vehicles. Man, 2 maiden flights of a vehicle, Challenger and Atlantis. And Discovery's 4th, first time they flew 7 people, 51D. That was in April of 85. So he had 2 flights in 85, April and October. Close. And that October one was a top secret DOD mission. But Bobko was part of this is the Manned Orbiting Laboratory that was proposed in the 60s with a Gemini spacecraft that would have a hole in its heat shield to go into a space lab that was basically a military outpost for spy versus spy type activities, visual, camera, and radar. And this is not Bobko, but that is Bob Crippen, next to a spacesuit that he may have wore. Air Force was over the MOL program, and this is one of the MOL Air Force space flight suits that is in the Oklahoma Science Museum. Incredibly, has some items in there, including this. How they got that, I'll never know, but about 40 miles west is the fabulous museum of the General Tom Stafford in Weatherford. But I show this to show that Bobko would have been maybe there was like 16 military MOL astronauts, Manned Orbiting Laboratory at the Air Force had, and Carl Bobko was one with Bob Crippen, and then they spent 56 days together there with Bill Thagard in the middle, Cripps on the left, Bo's on the right, in what was called the SMEAT test, the altitude. Let me get the right acronym there, Marty. Skylab Medical Experiment Altitude Test, a 56-day ground simulation of the Skylab mission, and in 1974. And we have got Crippen's uniform that he's wearing there on a mannequin, right next to his bronzed handprints there. So quite an astronaut. I would love to meet him. Carol Bob, Karol is how he spells his first name. 85 years old today. So God bless him, and he truly is one of our space treasures, as we call him, for his pioneering work as pilot and commander of the early shuttles. Well, we got that other birthday. The 3rd anniversary of the Space Force was established December 20th, 2019, when the National Defense Authorization Act was signed into law, and the United States Space Force became a separate and distinct branch of the armed services. The USSF is the Space Service branch of the U.S. Armed Forces and one of 8 uniformed services and the world's only independent space force. Think about that there, China and Russia. uh, it was created, this is the first new branch of the armed services in 73 years. So I suppose the Coast Guard might be the most recent after that, would be my guess. And Marty's too far away from the microphone, and Connie's not going to chime in there, but that'd be my guess there. Wouldn't you, Marty? The most recent, is 73 years ago, is probably the Coast Guard. I'd have to look that up. The Space Force flag. All right, but let's get some Space Force knowledge going here in just a minute about this. We wanted to show you them cutting the cake over there at the either Vandenberg is one of our forces, main installations, and of course Patrick Air Base here on the Space Coast is where they cut this cake. The Space Force flag has a black field and official flag fringed in platinum. We'll show you that in a second here as we get into. Wanted to just make you aware of a couple other things in space history that we're not ignoring. One is, how about that Soyuz spacecraft that was spewing all that coolant, apparently. They're not, it's been mum's the word since this happened last week. The speculation is it might have been hit by a micrometeoroid that pierced just by chance one of the plumbing units of this. It's not due to be used to get them back to Earth for 3 more months in March, all right? And our 7 astronauts and cosmonauts are all safe up there on the space station, but we need to keep in thoughts what might happen if they can't use this to get back. The only other crew-rated vehicle up there is the Crew Dragon 5 that's been attached for about 2 months up there. They all 7 cannot get in that Crew Dragon 5. They probably could if they had to, and have some sort of a crazy ballistic reentry maybe because of the weight distribution. But what's going to happen? They're working on this right now. I'm just planting the seed, that talking with Nick Thomas out there at the Space Center this week, our astronaut wrangler that does frequent shows with us on Mondays. Nick speculated that maybe Elon Musk would become the hero and want to send a one person in the Crew Dragon. The Crew Dragon's completely autonomous. Maybe he could send one up there without a crew that they could all come back safely in. And then Elon Musk and SpaceX would be the big hero in this. And, they're thinking about it, how they could probably do it. And the media monster that Musk is. So, well, this is something that during the holidays, don't let it slip out of your sight there. Google it once in a while and see what's going on. Pretty much up to date. You can be kept up at NASA International Space Station website there, where they feature a lot of these things. Something else that we'll be talking about next week. There's our Expedition 68 crew up there. We have got Americans, 2 Russians. We got 3 Russians up there, 2 Russian men and a woman, Anna Krinin. She's only the 5th Russian woman to go up in space, okay? And so you got 2 women and 5 men up there in the space station. So Expedition 68 in the middle of this, doing all the science and things that are making America, the whole world, not America, I meant to say the whole world, a better place to live. And you better believe that. One interesting thing that I heard from Nikki Stott, the astronaut that's a good friend of our museum, is the fact that instead of that, they've got, like she said, thumb drives of human tissues that they're experimenting on, human tissues from the lung and the liver and the heart and so forth, where they can do medical experiments on instead of using people as guinea pigs. So we'll be talking some of what they're doing up there next week also on the slow news time between Christmas and the New Year. Also, we'll be bringing you some information about the Webb telescope that is working beyond expectations. This is the first image of a planet going around that star. That star in the blue with the crosshairs coming out, those are artifacts of the telescope's performance. This is actually 4 different pictures of a planet that has a dense atmosphere around it going around a star. So how cool is that we're going to be seeing not the surfaces, but we'll be seeing the blobs of the larger exoplanets as they orbit nearby stars. We've done a program on that on Stay Curious about exoplanets on our Stargazer episodes from the backyard. Around the nearest 500 stars are more than 5,000 exoplanets, all confirmed at least 3 times by different scientific methods. So we know they're there. We just don't know who's looking back at us. Well, let's look at the Space Force and get some knowledge on here of what we know and don't know about our newest branch of the military. The Space Force flag has a black field with fringed platinum, okay. The flag is derived from the central and supporting elements of the Space Force seal, including the delta wing, globe, elliptical orbit, Polaris star, and star clusters, okay. So that bends, and here is the Space Force emblem. And I meant to do it, and in my production time, I forgot to put up any of the... when this was released, everybody flipped out about it being so similar to Star Trek's logo. All right. Marty's left us to go do some family business. Connie, you're here with us. Not going to put you on the spot, but she likes Star Trek. And nod your head that, yes, they did go crazy over this. The Star Trek people, that they copied our insignia on this thing. And we'll have another reference of our Space Force to science fiction here in just a minute. But what is the Space Force motto? Semper Supra, always above. The USSF motto was created to capture the esprit de corps of both current and future Space Force workers. So what are the Space Force workers called in this branch of the military? They're called, in the Army, they're soldiers. In the Navy, they're sailors. In the Space Force, they're called guardians. Guardians is what a person serving in the Space Force is called. Always above was the logo, was the motto created to capture the esprit de corps of both current and future guardians, and intends to bring together service members by giving them a sense of pride. All right. So what do those guardian uniforms look like, you ask? Oh no, not yet. I got to show you the logo there. I forgot to put the Star Trek. You see the logo is probably very similar if you know anything about Star Trek on there. And that's okay. I mean, there's so many types of designs you can put out there, right, Connie? And she's handing me, Dave Stang is, the Coast Guard, Bill Whiting said the Coast Guard was established in 1790, older than the Navy. Okay, thank you, Bill, for straightening me out on that. But there's the Space Force logo. What do we know? What do those uniforms look like? All right. There they are. That is the Cleveland professional baseball team. Was changed their name from Indians to Guardians. Though I grew up in Ohio, I was more of a Detroit Tigers fan than a Cleveland Indians fan, but I gotta say that there was not one Indian that protested it in front of whatever board they had to change this. It was a politically correct move, I think. In fact, there's a lot of Indians making a lot of money in the casinos up there in Cleveland and in other parts in there. But nonetheless, they changed the name to the Guardians, and that fit a bridge going into the city that had these gargoyles on it, kind of guardians of the city on there. So, but it gives me a chance to make fun and laugh and say, hey, no, those aren't the uniforms of our Guardian Space Force military members. This is what is the meme that they put together for the Guardian uniforms, all right? So immediately, there's just so many styles you can put out there, right? And so, because this has got a diagonal looking button situation going on the jacket, people had to say that this looks like Battlestar Galactica. All right, there's the actual uniforms, they're dressed there. And there on the left is the Guardians dress uniform there, and there is the Battlestar Galactica one. All right, so I did get that together. Um, and still people are going crazy over it. Like I said, there's only so many things that you can do to make a uniform look different. All right, it doesn't have but I love it. It looks great. How much does a Space Force Guardian make? Well, as of December 5th this year, the average annual pay for Space Force is $73,000 a year. That's $35 an hour, about $1,400 a week. That's the average pay, taking in the people that come in first and the ones that have been there a little while. And this is definitely an Air Force division, and they follow the Air Force in their ranks and so forth. We'll talk about here in a second. They're called the Guardians. If I wanted to join the Space Force there, Mark Usiak's thinking about, am I too old to join the Space Force? Yes, you are, Mark. 17 to 39 years of age, U.S. citizen with a high school diploma, but an equivalent GED is accepted, all right? Now, the highest rank in the Space Force is a Chief Master Sergeant, which is the military E9 level, all right? And we're going to talk about how many Space Force soldiers are there, all right? Full-time, 16,000 military and civilian personnel. There are 19 career specialties within the Space Force. So if you've got a youngster out there that loves space, maybe you can be involved in this. How many Space Force officers are there? Well, there's a list of active duty U.S. Space Force general officers, 24 active duty general officers. There's 2 generals, 6 lieutenant generals, 6 major generals, and 10 brigadier generals. All of them transferred from the U.S. Air Force. Does the Space Force have guns? All right. Are these ladies here holstered up, for example? Well, guess what? The Space Force is unique among America's military branches in that it has no weapons, publicly acknowledged at least, on their bodies. Them weapons are up in space, orbiting the Earth, okay? Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about their look again. The U.S. Space Force, the navy blue uniform features a series of silver buttons running diagonally from the right shoulder to the chest, just like those worn in Star Wars and Star Trek. It's not the first time the Space Force has been accused of ripping off ideas from sci-fi. The Delta logo that we show you here has been compared with the Starfleet badge in Star Trek, while the name Guardian for service members has been likened to Marvel comic Guardians of the Galaxy. All right, but there's just so many things that you can do out there. And here's their patches. Can I join the Space Force as a civilian? Well, yes, you can. There are many opportunities, as now are considered hybrid opportunities out there, where you can work part-time or full-time. So a Space Force civilian employee, you now have to live near a base, and that might be something that you can look into, and you go to the military, go to their website, and apply for something there. So, I guess I would think that I'm way too old for any of this. What do you think, Doug Forrest? He's in L.A. Are you learning something about the military branch here of the Space Force? Yes, there are quite a few women in the Space Force. The rank of Master Sergeant is the highest that you can get. Let's see, Ophelia Sautero's watching. Gary Gerald, hey Gary, hope everything's You're getting ready there in Georgia probably for some bad weather. But Merry Christmas to you, Gary, and your wife. It was happy to meet you both here this year in our museum. Cynthia Rossi, great to meet you this year. We've got William Whiting getting me straightened out with the Coast Guard was before the Navy. All right. Leslie Day's watching. Hey, Leslie. And Chris Callie. Howdy, Chris. We're going to unveil Chris Callie's one of his newest pieces of artwork. We'll do that next week when we wrap up the 50th anniversary of Apollo 17's journey to the moon half a century ago. And of course, Robert Law up there in Dundee, Scotland. Merry Christmas to you, my friend. We look forward to seeing you in 2023. And Tom Ucx there, hunkered down in the cold in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And we're glad that you're all watching us today, staying curious. I say hey to Carlton. I mentioned Doug Forrest is there. He's an artist also. And our artists Callie and Forrest there may be thinking of different ways to depict the Space Force for us there. Let's see, the women. Oh, yes, women in the Space Force. This is very interesting. Here's 3 ladies that have just graduated from Officer Candidate School at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. The Space Force is the only branch of the U.S. military where women have always had equal roles. Hooray for that. I'll give you a Semper Fi for that, okay? The Space Force obtained its first all-female operations crew shortly after it was formed in July 2020, and they have a first female Air Force general officer is Nina Armanago, and Trin Stist and Karim Pogue are also Chief Master Sergeants, the highest rank within, outside of being a major, a general from the Air Force. So lots of women are getting into the Space Force, and that is a good thing. I know Tom Ucx wondering out there if he could get in the Space Force, would they allow tattoos? No, Tom. Well, yeah, you can have a tattoo, Tom. Only 1 tattoo per hand in the shape of a ring, no more than 3/4 of an inch wide. So I'd maybe put you a tribal band or something around your soldier there, your arm there, as far as a tattoo. And can I have a Space Force beard if I was to be part of the Space Force there? Well, currently both airmen and guardians are not allowed to grow a beard unless approved for medical or religious reasons. Even then, they have to have it neat, clean, professional, and no more than 1/4 inch in length. All right, so no beards. I've seen some mustaches, though. They're a little more liberal on that. So I bet you can rock a mustache in the Space Force. And the final question for all of us out there wanting to be in the Space Force is there a medical test? Do I have to pass a fitness test? Well, the Guardians, they don't have an annual fitness test, okay? In fact, instead, they will get smart rings or other wearable fitness devices to keep track of their physical activity throughout the year. The devices also will be programmed to give feedback about mental health, balanced eating, and sleep. Now think about that. So they're turning the Guardians into like semi-robots. Okay. And so more science fiction, iRobot is coming true. Cyborgs are what the Guardians will eventually become as they wear their medical devices to gauge their mental health and so forth. But that's probably not going to happen. Well, let's see. One final thought about our Guardians out there in space is, how about their assets that they have? Oh, yeah. They got some tremendous assets out there, like the spy shuttle, the X-37B, shown here after it landed after 2 years in space, all right, over 700 days. Many of the Floridians were woke up to the double sonic boom about a month ago in the middle of the night. There it is, already ready on its rollers to go back to its orbital processing facility built in beside the VAB, where they do, it's top secret, but they have it on the wall there, home of the X-37B. And the Space Force, this is one of their priority. They have 3 of them. I think they built 3 and they've orbited 2 of them, each time for longer periods of time. Both of them have been in orbit for over more than 2 years. So think about that. And there's some jokes and puns and memes on the spacesuit, about the Space Force, where has anyone been deployed by in the Space Force? Well, if you're going to be deployed, you have to be deployed to outer space, right? So we haven't had any Space Force military people go to the International Space Station yet, but there was a little tongue-in-cheek joke out there that 4 of them were deployed to the sun to go check out the sun, and a little meme that I pulled off the website of the Space Force for this on there. So hope you've enjoyed learning about the America's latest military branch, the Space Force, and I certainly did research in this for us here on Stay Curious. Let me get my Christmas mug from my boss. Thank you. We'll be putting these in production and offer them to you in 2023 as our awareness and following of space of our show here continues with Stay Curious. Connie, anything that we have to fix up on our board there, or anyone we need to say hi to that we missed? Okay, thank you very much. Let me get a swig of this rocket fuel. And another big shout out to Emily Carney and Dave Giles, I would think how you pronounce his name there. An excellent podcast that you should be listening to. And we hope that their listeners are doing the same here on Stay Curious, as we come to you every weekday at 4 o'clock live. But you can find our whole 715 podcasts on Facebook library, and we've been broadcasting on YouTube, where we hope that you go to help monetize us. We've been on YouTube a year now, so we appreciate everybody watching. Season's greetings to you all. Tomorrow I will be doing a program about the Star of Bethlehem. If you've not heard the story of directly out of the Bible about what the Star of Bethlehem wasn't, is more importantly what you're going to learn. And what it was is up to your own imagination, as there are some celestial happenings that were going on around the birth of Jesus Christ in the 4 BC to 2 AD time range, that things were going on in the sky. Maybe that was something that those wise men saw. So come to us tomorrow with a program on what was the Star of Bethlehem. Until then, I'm Mark Marquette saying we're so glad that you have joined us to Stay Curious, and we can't wait to see you again to bridge the space between us.